Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Jaya Gora Hari Gora Hari Jaya Gora Hari. Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada Jai Om Vishnu Paramahansa Parivrakacharya Ashosata Shatashi Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Samspakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnu Paramahansa Parivrakacharya Ashosata Shrimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jam Vishnupad Srila Gaura Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj ki. Jam Vishnupad Srila Sachidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki. Jam Vishnupad Srila Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki. Jai Shri Rup Sanata Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiv Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Sat Goswami Prabhu ki. Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki. Jai Iskon Guru Vrinda ki. Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakti Vrinda ki. Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki. Jai Shri Navadip Mayapur Dham ki. Jai Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki. Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki. Jai Ganga Mai ki. Jai Yamuna Mai ki. Jai Bhakti Devi ki. Jai Tulsi Devi ki. Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki. Jai Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki. The whole world ISKCON ki. Jai Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki. Jai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to you, Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Okay. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanang namaskritya narang cheva narottamam deving saraswating vyasam tato jayamudiraye nashapravesha bhadreshu nityang bhagavata sevaya bhagavat yuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Jai. Okay. Narada. Okay, so we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 12, Text 41. Narada Uvacha Nunam Sunite Pati Devataya Tapa Prabhavasya Sutasya Tam Gatim Dristva Abhyapayan Api Veda Vadina Na Eva Adigantam Prabhavanti Kim Nripa Radha Vacha. Okay, yes, sorry. Okay. Dunam sunite pati deva. Okay. Dunam sunite pati devatasyas. Tapa prabhavasya sutasya tam gatim. Trisvabhupayanapi veda varino. Nevadikantam prabhavanti kim nripa. Narada uvacha Nunam sunite pati devatasya. Sorry, let me do it again. Okay. Tapa prabhavasya sutasya tam gatim. Trisvabhyupayanapi veda varino. Nevadikantam prabhavanti kim nripa. Does anyone want to try? Narada Uvacha Nunam Sunite Pati Devatayas Tapa Pravavasya Tutasya Tam Gatim Trisvabhyupayanapi Vedavanido Nevadikantam Prabhavanti Kimripa Radha Uvacha Nunam Sunite Pati Devatais Tapa Pravasya Sutasya Tam Gatim Trisvabhyupayam api vedavadino Nevadikantam prabhavanti kim nripa. Radha vacha Nunam sunite pati devatayas Tapa pravasya sutasya tam gatim Tristvabhyupayanapi vedavadino Nevadikantam prabhavanti kinripa. Okay, Jai. Please repeat after me. Narada vacha. Narada said, Nunam, certainly, Sunite, of Suniti, Pati Devataya, very much attached to her husband, Tapa Pravasya, by the influence of austerity, Sutasya, of the sun, Tam, that, Gatim, position, Drishtva, observing, Abhyupayan, the means, Api, although, Vedavadinaha, strict followers of the Vedic principles, or the so-called Vedantists. Na, never, eva, certainly, adigantam, to attain, prabhavanti, are eligible, kim, what to speak of, nripaha, ordinary kings. Translation. The great sage Narada said, simply by the influence of his spiritual advancement and powerful austerity, Dhruva Maharaj, the son of Suniti, who was devoted to her husband, acquired an exalted position not possible to attain even for the so-called Vedantists or strict followers of the Vedic principles, not to speak of ordinary human beings. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In this verse, the word Vedavadina is very significant. Generally, a person who strictly follows the Vedic principles is called Vedavadi. There are also so-called Vedantas who advertise themselves as followers of Vedanta philosophy, but who misinterpret Vedanta. The expression Vedavada Rata is also found in the Bhagavad Gita. referring to persons who are attached to the Vedas without understanding the purpose of the Vedas. Such persons may go on talking about the Vedas or may execute austerities in their own way, but it is not possible for them to attain to such an exalted position as Dhruva Maharaj. As far as ordinary kings are concerned, it is not at all possible. The specific mention of kings is significant because formerly kings were also Rajarshis, for the kings were as good as great sages. Dhruva Maharaj was a king, and at the same time he was as learnt as a great sage. But without devotional service, neither a great king, a Kshatriya, nor a great Brahmana strictly adhering to the Vedic principles can be elevated to the exalted position attained by Dhruva Maharaj. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namne Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya. Oh, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Sunivari Paschaicha Desatarine Vanchakopatyubhascha Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai. Okay, so I was very happy when Raghunath Prabhu asked me to give class, because I have this deep desire in my heart to offer this seva for the Lord, but that does mean that I haven't had much experience, and I feel like being asked specifically here with Shri Shri Radharana to do this is such a privilege, and I'm definitely not qualified, but I very much appreciate this opportunity, so thank you so much. So I thought that I would start off by just giving a bit of an overview of the Dhruva Maharaj pastime, because I know that some of the Bhakti theatre devotees are here who may not have heard all the classes, and also for those who are like me, who Krishna is blessed with more forgetfulness than remembrance. So I thought it would be quite great for that. So the pastime starts where Maitreya is speaking to Vidura, and he's about to describe all the descendants of Swayambhuva Manu. And Swayambhuva Manu had two sons, who was Uttanapad and Priyavrata. So Uttanapad Maharaj, he had two queens, Suruchi and Suniti. So in this verse, in the translation that we read, we heard or we learned that Dhruva Maharaj is the son of Suniti. But Suruchi, so Dhruva Maharaj's stepmom, was much more dear to the king. And what actually happened is that Dhruva Maharaj tried to climb onto the lap of his father, but Suruchi got so envious about Dhruva Maharaj that she couldn't stand that he was she couldn't stand that he was sitting on his father's lap. So she literally said this verse. So this is 4:8:11. Queen Suruchi told Dhruva Maharaj, "My dear child, you do not deserve to sit on the throne or on the lap of the king. Surely you are also the son of the king, but because you did not take birth from my womb, you are not qualified to sit on your father's lap." So you can just imagine the amount of envy to be saying this to a little 5-year-old king who a child, well, Dhruva Maharaj is a king as well, but to a 5-year-old child who just wants his father's affection. You can kind of imagine how poisonous her mind must be, and it's just out of envy. So it's literally envy that poisons the mind. And then, so 2 texts later, in text 13, she says, "If you at all desire to rise to the throne of the king, then you have to undergo severe austerities. First of all, you must satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. And then, when you are favored by him because of such worship, you shall have to take your next birth from my womb." So I chose this verse specifically because it speaks about severe austerities. And in the verse we just read, Narada Muni is glorifying his disciple by saying that he performed powerful austerities, and that is one of the ways, also with devotional service, that's how he conquered the Lord's heart, and that the Lord actually appeared before him. And what was also quite significant, I found in this verse, is because I've been meditating a lot on seeing challenges as an opportunity to deepen our devotional practice. So this comes from a few of Bhakti Tirtha Swami's lectures, where he speaks about gratitude, and he says when we have like a challenging situation, we can be grateful that now we can use this challenge to learn certain devotional qualities. So it is very difficult, but here we can see that Dhruva Maharaj really took this this heinous action from his stepmother and just learned a lot from it. He actually attained like the ultimate goal of life. So when we have reversals, we can, I know it's very difficult in the moment, but we can try and just meditate on how this is going to help us to further advance. So then after this, obviously Dhruva Maharaj is like a little child, no? So he's like very angry because he has Kshatriya blood flowing through his veins. So he gets very angry, but at the same time, his heart was full of grief. His heart was broken. He couldn't sit on the lap of his father. His father didn't even stand up for him, you know, like how heartsore would you be if your father's just like, yes, you can't sit on my lap because I'm too attached to your stepmother. It's quite a hectic situation. So Dhruva Maharaj went to his mom. And what his mom said to him is that actually what your stepmother said was factual. It's quite crazy, right? But why she says it was factual is that you must worship the Lord for a better birth. So Nietzsche's speaking to him like that. And then she gives the example of Dhruva Maharaj's great-grandfather, who is Brahma. And he says that Brahma had to go through a lot of austerities in order to obtain the qualifications for creating the universe. So if you guys are familiar of the Brahma pastime, is that Vishnu was lying in the causal ocean, and out from his navel came a lotus flower, and on top of the lotus flower, that's where Lord Brahma took his birth. And then Lord Brahma was really bewildered because he's looking around him and he's just like, what is happening? There's just this crazy tumultuous ocean underneath me and I don't know what to do. So he literally, like, he goes down the lotus stem, he looks around and he's just not finding anything. So eventually he hears from the sky, ta, pa. And tapa or tapas literally means austerity. So Brahma was like, okay, I'm going to perform austerities. So for 1,000 years, Brahma performs austerities. And we all know that Brahma's one day is like what, 1,000 of the 4 yugas combined. That's one day, right? Yeah, so it's quite a long time. Like 1,000 of those years, he performed austerities in order to obtain the Lord. So Suniti is reminding Dhruva Maharaj about this. And then she further reminds Dhruva that even Dhruva Maharaj's great-grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu, so remember we're now speaking about the lineage of Swayambhuva Manu. So there's Brahma, Swayambhuva Manu, King Uttanapad, who is Dhruva's father, and then there's Dhruva. So just so we can get a nice visual understanding of how their succession is working. So Swayambhuva Maharaj also had to perform many sacrifices and had to give a lot of charity, and in this way he pleased the Lord in order to obtain material happiness and ultimately also liberation. So she's reminding Dhruva Maharaj of this. So Dhruva Maharaj is like, okay, fine, you know, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna perform austerity. So off Dhruva Maharaj goes into the forest and he's performing austerities. And then Narada hears about this conversation that Dhruva Maharaj had with his mother, and he becomes a little bit ecstatic, and he says, how wonderful are the Kshatriyas. They cannot tolerate even a slight infringement upon their prestige. Just imagine, this boy is only a small child, yet harsh words from his stepmother proved unbearable to him. So this is just giving a little bit inclination of how powerful the Kshatriyas really used to be, that they couldn't stand for, like, firstly their honor being challenged, because that's like one of the, like even Krishna says to Arjuna, dishonor is worse than death for the Kshatriya, because the Kshatriya must be honorable because they're representing like justice and protection in society. So therefore Dhruva Maharaj is like, an injustice has been done to me, and it's not very easy for like the Kshatriyas to get over this. So therefore Dhruva Maharaj was like very much determined, even at such a young age. And then so off Dhruva Maharaj goes, and now King Uttanapad is actually quite sad. He's like, oh, his son has left. Look, and he's lamenting. He's like, I'm so attached to like my wife that I couldn't even be there for my son, you know. But then Narada Muni, you know, the transcendental spaceman with his little Veena, he goes to the king and he's like, don't worry, Mr. King, Dhruva Maharaj is all right because the Lord provides for everyone. So even though Dhruva Maharaj is only 5 years and he's in the forest, the Lord provides for everyone. Just like, the birds and the bees don't have to like over endeavor in order to get, seeds or pollen, etc. The Lord provides for everyone's needs according to what they need. Okay, sorry, got excited. And that actually links to the next part. So, Narada Muni then goes to Dhruva Maharaj and Shishi Radha Radhanath ki, Giri Govardhan ki, Gaura Hari ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. It's such an honor to sit next to Shishi Radhanath. So Narada Muni has now gone to Dhruva Maharaj and he says, hey, you're a small little kid. What are you doing here in the forest? Why don't you go back home and maybe like do this later on in life? Rather enjoy your child or your youth while you have it. And Dhruva Maharaj is no, like I just explained, he has the Kshatriya blood flowing through his veins. So he's super determined. He's like, no, I'm going to obtain the Lord so I can get my desire fulfilled. And what was his desire? He wanted a kingdom greater than his great-grandfather. So I was speaking about Brahma, who is his great-grandfather, and he literally created the three worlds. He created this material universe, and Dhruva Maharaj wanted something even more than that. And it's like, how can you desire, more than a universe? It's like unfathomable. But he was very determined because his prestige was, tested. So he tells Narada Muni, and he's like, excuse me, dear saint, like, thank you very much for coming here, but if you're not going to help me, then please leave, because I am fully determined to obtain the Lord. And so Narada Muni was like, okay, cool, because he just tested his disciple. This similarly, Krishna tested Arjuna, and then only when Arjuna like surrendered fully, then Krishna was like, okay, now I will speak the Bhagavad Gita. So similarly, Narada Muni then instructed Dhruva Maharaj about the Ashtanga Yoga process, and ultimately to also chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And so Dhruva Maharaj does this. He does the whole process, which usually takes yogis like millions and millions of lifetimes and births, etc. But Dhruva Maharaj, he did it in 6 months. So you can just imagine like what a determined Kshatriya he is. So that was really great. And now, so Dhruva Maharaj is like meditating, his eyes are closed, and all of a sudden he sees the Lord within his mind's vision, and he just becomes so captivated. He's like, wow, the Lord, and he's so beautiful. And then all of a sudden it disappears, and his whole meditation breaks, because you can just imagine if you just see the Lord and he's gone, like you're going to become distressed. So Dhruva Maharaj, he breaks his meditation, even though he's been meditating for like 6 months, And then he opens his eyes, and behold, there stands the Supreme Personality of Godhead right in front of him, and he's flabbergasted, and he's only 5, and he has this deep desire to offer some prayers, but he can't. He's 5, I barely know how to pray, and I'm a bit older than 5. So what the Lord does is he takes his beautiful conch and he touches Dhruva Maharaj's head, and then that empowers Dhruva Maharaj to give really exalted prayers. So I was reading through these prayers, and I came across one that I really liked, and I thought it was quite relevant. So this is from Canto 4, Chapter 9, Text 11. So Dhruva Maharaj continues praying, O unlimited Lord, kindly bless me so that I may associate with great devotees who engage in your transcendental loving service constantly. As the waves of a river constantly flow, such transcendental devotees are completely situated in an uncontaminated state of life. By the process of devotional service, I shall surely be able to cross the nescient ocean of material existence, which is filled with the waves of blazing, fire-like dangers. It will be very easy for me, for I am becoming mad to hear about your transcendental qualities and pastimes, which are externally existent. So I just want you to note that he has become mad to hear about the transcendental qualities and pastimes, because it will link to something that I'll say later. And why I particularly like this is because I had the opportunity to come here to Shishi Radhanath and spend time with all the wonderful devotees. So I really resonated with Dhruva Maharaj's prayer. It's like, yes, please may I always associate with the wonderful devotees of the Lord. And so Dhruva Maharaj is praying like this to the Lord, and the Lord eventually says, like, yes, I will grant, your material desire, and I'll give even more than that. You will have your own planet as well. But then Dhruva Maharaj starts lamenting, because he's like, how could I have asked for something material that's impermanent when, I could have asked directly for the Lord? So he was literally lamenting that he had this material desire and ambition that he was trying to fulfill. But he was very grateful for seeing the Lord. So then Dhruva Maharaj, he becomes the king, because Uttanapad Maharaj, he gave over the throne to Dhruva Maharaj, and Dhruva Maharaj ruled it for 36,000 years. And then, so during this time, so this is now the next chapter, chapter 10. So his brother, Uttama, who was born from Suruchi, he goes into the forest, and he's actually killed. He's killed by a yakshasha there. And the stepmother becomes so maddened that she goes into the forest to search for him, but she gets devoured by a forest fire. So why this was particularly significant is because Dhruva Maharaj had, anger towards his stepmother for what she had done to him, and therefore when there was part of his conviction of wanting, this big material desire of a kingdom greater than his great-grandfather, and so he was meditating on this anger and wanting revenge. And then, in this purport, Prabhupada writes that when a devotee has revengeful thoughts in his heart, because he's a devotee of the Lord actually has to reciprocate with that. So that's why Prabhupada explained that it's we must be so careful with, having anger toward anyone, because we don't want them to have such a negative reaction. So Dhruva Maharaj gets overwhelmed with anger and lamentation. It's really cool. We can keep seeing this anger theme in the Dhruva Maharaj pastime. So he really teaches us, how to deal with our anger. So he goes and fights the yakshashas, and then his grandfather Swayambhuva Manu is like, please Dhruva, please stop fighting. And then Dhruva Maharaj was like, okay, I'll stop. And then the treasurer Kuvera actually prays to Dhruva Maharaj and says, you haven't killed anyone because, the soul cannot be, created or destroyed. So therefore you haven't killed anyone. And then he actually gives him a benediction, which is just amazing. Imagine you harm someone's family members, and then the father of the family gives you benediction. You can just imagine, how exalted the devotees of the Lord are to just, grant benedictions and just to always be a well-wisher. So we can learn a lot from that. So then Dhruva Maharaj, he leaves for Badarika Ashram to perform some more austerities over there. So you can see another theme that we have coming through the whole pastime is this austerity, and specifically in the verse that we read today. And then Nanda and Sunanda comes in their little airplanes to come and fetch Dhruva Maharaj. And what's really significant about this part is that Dhruva Maharaj offers his obeisances to the airplane. So you might think, why would Dhruva Maharaj do that? Yes, I understand if you offer your obeisances to the Lord or to Narada Muni or even the two servants of the Lord, Nanda and Sunanda, who came to fetch you, but why the airplane? And Prabhupada literally explains in the purport that as soon as we are in a temple, we should know very well that we are situated differently from the material world. In the temple, Lord Vishnu, his throne, his room, and all other things associated with the temple are transcendental. So Prabhupada here states that the Lord is spiritual, and so is his paraphernalia, because the Lord is none different to his names, his form, his pastimes, his paraphernalia. So literally this temple we can worship. When we come here, we can offer obeisances outside, because this is all paraphernalia of the Lord. So that's another really cool thing I really love about the Dhruva Maharaj pastime. And then, let's see. Let me drink some water. Okay, so now we're in the current chapter 12. So Dhruva Maharaj is going home, and, they've come and fetch him. And then yesterday's verse, Maharaj spoke on so nicely, and I'll just read that text again. So that's text 40. After observing the glories of Dhruva Maharaj, the great sage Narada, playing his veena, went to the sacrificial arena of the Prachetas and very happily chanted the following 3 verses. So we were left on a cliffhanger yesterday, and now we get to read this wonderful verse of what Narada Muni says about Dhruva Maharaj, because, you know, if the spiritual master is going to like glorify his disciple, you can know there's a lot of like depth there. So the great sage Narada said, simply by the influence of his spiritual advancement and powerful austerity, Dhruva Maharaj, the son of Suniti, who was devoted to her husband, acquired an exalted position not possible to attain even for the so-called Vedantists or strict followers of the Vedic principles, not to speak of ordinary human beings. Jai. So in the verse, Prabhupada said that the words Veda Vada Rata is very significant, and that it can be found in the Bhagavad Gita. So I went to look up what, firstly, the word for word translation of that was, and it says supposed followers of the Vedas. And so this is from Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verses 42 and 43. And in the purport, Prabhupada explained this, and he says, men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. So here we can understand that these are the supposed followers of the Vedas, that they don't actually understand the conclusion of the Vedas, but they just want to perform austerities and different things to get, like, you know, karma kanda, to acquire certain things for material enjoyment. But Prabhupada is making this point, or Narada Muni is making this point, and saying that even if you follow Vedic principles, like to the 10th degree, like, you know, 100%, you won't get the ultimate goal of life without, you know, devotional service. So this then reminded me of the Nectar of Instruction, verse 2, and that verse says, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them, and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. So this further illustrates the Bhagavad Gita explanation of Veda Vada Rata, because it says that you should not follow the rules and regulations of the Vedas in order to get any type of material benedictions or results, and yet you shouldn't avoid the rules and regulations that's going to help you to advance in bhakti. And obviously that's, or the main austerities that we practice as devotees is to avoid illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. So having an understanding of, you know, this, that we should perform austerities that's going to help us for bhakti practice, and not austerities that's going to give us material advancement, we can conclude that austerity is like a very big part of our parampara system. Like, you know, Lord Brahma performed austerities, his son Swayambhavu, and now Dhruva Maharaj as well performed austerities in order to reach the Lord. And with this, we could be like, okay, we want to now perform austerities. But we cannot imitate Dhruva Maharaj, because he followed the austerities according to the Ashtanga yoga system, which is very, very intense. And that's why I didn't go in depth with into it with my overview, because Prabhupada, Prabhupada as well, but Krishna through the Bhagavad Gita tells us which austerities we can follow in this age. And I'm sure you guys all know about these ones. So it's Bhagavad Gita chapter 17 verse 14, 15 and 16, which speaks about the austerities of the body, speech and mind. So first let's look at the austerities of the body. So austerities of the body consist in worship of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmanas, the spiritual master, and superiors like the father and mother, and in cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and non-violence. So Dhruva Maharaj obviously did this because his spiritual master was so pleased with him that he was, he recited this verse glorifying Dhruva Maharaj's austerities and spiritual advancement. And then this also relates to the 4 regulative principles that Prabhupada has so nicely given us, that we can, live a wholesome life and go back to God at the end of this life, which is just so beautiful. And then let's look at the austerities of speech. Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. So this overview that I gave, where Suruchi, Dhruva Maharaj's stepmom, spoke to Dhruva Maharaj, and Suniti speaking to Dhruva Maharaj, perfectly illustrates this austerity of speech. So Suruchi, if you remember, she said to Dhruva Maharaj that, you need to perform austerities in order to take birth from my womb. So she said, glorify the Lord, but she didn't do it in a way that was pleasing to Dhruva Maharaj. She did it in a way that it agitated his mind, and therefore he became angry, and she actually died as a result of, not following the austerities of speech. But then look at Suniti. She was Dhruva Maharaj's mom, and out of love and affection for Dhruva Maharaj, she still spoke the truth and said, yes, Suruchi's right, which is amazing. She's literally agreeing with Suruchi, but she said that she shared it in a very pleasing and beneficial way that Dhruva Maharaj could actually take to it and take to devotional service from hearing her words. I just thought that was, a really cool thing as like a little takeaway. And then, so the last austerity is the austerity of the mind. And that is satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. And in this purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that the essence of this is to detach from sense gratification and to divert our attention to Vedic literatures, which are full of transcendental stories. So, well done, everyone. We are practicing the austerities of the mind because we're busy, hearing about Dhruva Maharaj's pastime. And so, what I want you guys to really take away from this is that you guys can go and look up the austerities of the mind, speech, and body, and let you just meditate on where are you, according to what is stated here, and then we can literally meditate on how we can try and, follow this more. And obviously, we should start with the basics, the 4 regulative principles and chanting every day. So that is like the number 1 takeaway. And then the second takeaway is that just learning how to control anger. So this relates to Dhruva Maharaj because he became angry, and therefore he went to the forest to perform austerities, and again he became angry and he started slaughtering the whole Yakshasha race. And so you can see that in those, you can engage anger in Krishna's devotional service, but we should also be aware of what we do with the anger, because it can cause like revengeful thoughts can cause harm to other people and to other devotees. So there's this person called Carla McLaren, and she wrote this book, The Language of Emotions, and she speaks about anger there. And she said that there's 3 ways to deal with anger. So the one is kind of like lashing out, and I'm sure everyone kind of knows that when we just start screaming and shouting, etc. So that can maybe be related to Dhruva Maharaj going and killing the whole the Yakshash race. So we don't want to do that with anger, but we also don't want to really like suppress anger, because let's say Dhruva Maharaj really kept that anger in his heart and he went to the forest and with like all these vengeful thoughts, like he couldn't deal with it because obviously he's like a little kid, so we don't want to keep the anger in our hearts either, but we want to be able to use anger in Krishna's service. So now Dhruva Maharaj obviously went to the forest and he performed austerities in this way. He kept thinking about the Lord, but with the idea of, controlling his anger and getting a really exalted planet eventually. And how we can apply anger is then to obviously like deal with our angry thoughts that comes up. So we can just like, let's say, let's say Ujvala has made me angry. I won't go and like shout and scream at her, right? So that's the one we don't want to do. The second one is like, I'm not going to keep it in my heart, because then I'm going to keep meditating on the anger and keep sending like revengeful energies her way. But the third way is actually to find more of a like a balance between those two. So now if I can go to Ujvala and be like, I feel really hurt that you did this certain thing. So what's really beautiful that is like you're using I language. So you're not saying you are the problem, you did this, you did that, but it's more about my emotions. I'm feeling hurt, I'm feeling angry, and it's because of your behavior, not because of you. So therefore you're not telling her that she is a certain way, which is making it like permanent, but her behavior, because behavior can always be changed, right? So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to add that little bit there because I thought it's very nice to think of ways that we can practically start, developing Vaishnav qualities and values, etc. Okay. I don't know how to end, I'm sorry. Do I just say Haribol and ask for questions? So Rup Prabhu, can you make any corrections, or maybe Raghunath Prabhu or Rukmini or any of you also exalted? Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so oh, this is very loud. Okay, how to start? So I always read about other religions, right? So what I have found is all religions basically are the same. They teach us to love God and serve Him, right? And so I was reading this book yesterday. My brother disturbed me. I don't know what's the name of the book. It's Prabhupada's book, the blue one, right? So this on the book, there's this woman who asked Prabhupada if does it really matter which God you pray to, Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Shiva, whoever, right? So because I didn't finish it, I have to ask you, right? So does it really matter which God you pray to? Do you think it matters?
So just firstly, I would say you need to know who God is, because the Vedas explain that, like Shiva is a type, is like, how do I explain? So they say like when you take milk and then you turn it into curd, you can't take the curd and make it back into milk, right? So Jiva is kind of in that, Shiva is in that category. So to understand that he doesn't have he's non-different to God, but still Krishna has more qualities than him. Specifically those four, that he plays the flute, that he's very beautiful, he's very strong, and I don't know what the last one is. Oh, he has wonderful pastimes. He's never alone. So that in that way, we want to try and like really pray to the Lord that encompasses all the opulences of God. But I know Prabhupada said that we don't have to chant, necessarily. He definitely wants us to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but he says that we're a non-sectarian movement. So therefore, just chant, the names of God within your religion, So if you're a Muslim, become the best Muslim you can be. If you're a Christian, become the best Christian you can be. So chant the names of God, Allah, Yahweh, Christ, etc. Because they're all like, the Vedic knowledge is so vast that we don't know everyone's position in relation to God. The Bhagavatam doesn't specifically say that like Jesus was like, let's say, a Shaktavesh avatar or something like that. So we don't really know, but we can understand that the Bible is part of the Vedic scripture. So therefore we give like a lot of respect. And so I would say it doesn't matter. I wouldn't even say it doesn't matter which God you pray to, because there's one God and he has different like incarnations. So therefore everyone's actually praying to the one God. But then just to make sure that who you're praying to is actually God, because you get people nowadays who pretend to be God. So if you're going to pray to someone who's not actually God, there's not gonna be much benefit. You're just going to be like misguided. Yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to add something to that. Yeah.
Sorry. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I do have a question. My dad passed on Saturday. You know, he was struggling from a stroke and, you know, the complications of being on a ventilator. And, you know, we did pray for his liberation on Saturday when he passed on. And he passed on quite peacefully, and we are so thankful for that. I just wonder, you know, is there any, from your knowledge as a spiritual teacher, is there any indication of what happens to the soul? You know, at his point of death, we were praying to Krishna, and we were, you know, chanting the mantra outside of his isolation ward. I just want to know, like, you know, that the way in which the soul leaves the body, is it like we noticed his mouth was opened, and when his life, perhaps it must have came out of his mouth. Is that an indication of reincarnation, or is he liberated to Krishna? Is there any way that we would perhaps know as family?
So just to confirm, you were chanting the Maha Mantra when he was passing
Yes,
away?
outside of the isolation room.
Yeah. So I'm really sorry, first of all, for your loss, because I know how difficult it is to lose someone. And we understand, you know, everyone's a spirit soul, but that doesn't take away the grief from, you know, not having them physically present there anymore.
Yes.
So I just want to relate with you there. And then we have this beautiful pastime in the Bhagavatam, and it speaks about a Jamil who named his son Narayan, which is, as you probably know, a name of God. And so on his deathbed, he was calling, Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. And even though he wasn't calling to Narayan specifically, he was calling for his son, when the Yamadutas, which is like the servants of the superintendent of death, Yamaraj, they came to try and take him away. But then the Vishnudutas came, you know, the followers of Vishnu, and they're like, sorry, you can't take the soul. He was chanting Narayan's name on his deathbed. And then, so literally the Yamadutas had to back away because they couldn't do anything. And then, so with this pastime, actually a Jamil had like a near-death experience. So because of this whole thing, Krishna allowed him to come back into his body to like continue his advancements. But if you were chanting, you know, the holy names at the point of his departure, then I could almost say, you know, he's guaranteed to go back home to Godhead, because that is the promise that, you know, Prabhupada gives us. Is that what you hear at the time of death, or what you meditate on, like that's where you're going to go. So, yeah.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. Does anyone want to make any corrections of what I said, or maybe someone had a realization just maybe as I was speaking? We have 3 more minutes. Okay.
Just a point about Comfort's question, just to put him more at ease, more comfortable than he is currently. Yeah, Prabhupada was very emphatic about being non-sectarian. It wasn't just lip service to attract people out there who are non-sectarian, but he was very, very focused on that. Like once he was in Tehran, the capital city of Iran, where people are predominantly Muslims, and his leader there at the time, Atraya Rishi Prabhu, very excitedly announced to Prabhupada his plans for preaching in Iran. And he said, Prabhupada, very soon we will have everyone in Iran chanting Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada said, oh, you want them to chant Hare Krishna? It's okay if they chant Allah's name as well. It's, you know, so Prabhupada was very open to embracing, because he understood the quality of Krishna that's inherent in every bona fide tradition. But it's it's most important, as you said, we have to be clear on who God is. You can't just go and pick up any random tree out there, put a label in it, and this is God. Because I just like the way it looks and feels and smells. No. All the indications through Guru, Sadhu and Shastra must support that this is a form of God. This person is God. And then if you worship that person in whatever tradition that supported identity is in, then you'll go back to that person. Prabhupada also spoke about the hierarchy of education. Class 1 or grade 1 maths is as perfect as university mathematics. It's as perfect. If you are learning in grade 1, 1 plus 2 is 3, that's as perfect as you learning some complicated formula in university. It's both perfect. But the development and the understanding, the details of it are different. So in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada would guide us that here we have the complete science, all the details are there about Krishna, the Supreme Lord. Whereas in others they may be perfect, but there's not as many details given. Okay?
Jai. Thank you, Sir Prabhu. Thank you, everyone. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari.